haven't really been paying attention to this whole Dave Chappelle controversy, but as far as I'm concerned, the guy can say whatever he wants. But now that it's okay to criticize Dave Chappelle, let's talk about Jussie Smollett. So I'm from the Chicago area, and Dave Chappelle got himself and Jussie Smollett famous for doing his famous Jussie Smollett bit about Jussie Smollett, who allegedly fabricated an attack against himself in Chicago, or so the police claim. See, that's the thing. The police are the only people who say the Osundara brothers confessed to a crime. And the police also say that Smollett confessed to a crime. But there's no actual physical evidence, there's no written testimony, there's no audio testimony of any confession from either of them. So why is it, if they both allegedly confessed, then why is it that the Osundara brothers were held? You know, people say, well, they're held for 24 hours and then released. It's like, well, why were they released? Well, the police say they were released because they confessed. Then why weren't they charged with anything? See, you see all the holes in this? So the police are the only ones that claim the Osundara brothers confessed to staging an attack on Jussie Smollett. But the only evidence of that is a statement written by the police that the police say that the Osundara brothers told them, and that the police wrote down in a police car a few days after the attack, or as they say, the alleged attack. See, it's like they can't keep it straight whether it's an attack or alleged attack. People say, like, oh, Jussie Smollett was out looking for a Subway sandwich at 2 in the morning at like 30 degree below weather. First of all, you gotta look up exactly what the temperature was that day. Second, who cares? In Chicago, it gets really cold sometimes. There's a polar vortex. If you gotta go out to eat, yeah, you're gonna go to the nearest place. Jussie Smollett, the nearest place was a Subway. It was probably the only thing open at 2 in the morning. And people say, oh, Jussie Smollett is rich. Why doesn't he have delivery? Why doesn't he go somewhere? Because he can walk. He's a man. He can walk 2 blocks to a Subway in below zero weather. If he's from Chicago, which he is, he's used to very cold weather and doing what you have to do to go get a sandwich in January. He's probably high as hell, 2 in the morning, wanting to get a sandwich. Can't blame him for that. And then people say, oh, the bleach couldn't have been poured on him because bleach freezes at that temperature. Well, it's like maybe the bleach was stored inside. And of course, the police found bleach in the apartment of the Osundara brothers. They also found cut up magazines, pieces of magazines that they used to write a ransom note to Jussie Smollett. There's no evidence suggesting the attack didn't happen. It probably did. Here's some other inconsistencies about the official police story about Jussie Smollett. People say, oh, well, his attackers screamed MAGA. They screamed, "Make America Great Again." They screamed, "This is MAGA country." That's actually what they yelled. This is MAGA country. They didn't say anything else. They didn't have a MAGA hat on. In fact, the Osundara brothers, when they bought stuff at a store before the attack, which did happen, even though there's no video evidence, there's video evidence of them buying stuff, and the shopkeep said that they asked for a MAGA hat. And when they didn't have a MAGA hat, they just bought some red hats. And then, according to Mark Garagos, Jussie Smollett's attorney, the Osundara brothers attacked Jussie Smollett while they were wearing whiteface and these red hats. So people say, well, why would his attackers say this is MAGA country? It happened in Chicago. This is obviously not MAGA country. Well, one, either they want it to be true that Chicago would be MAGA country, that could explain it, or two, they're trying to make it look like some white people in whiteface wearing MAGA-ish hats are attacking Jussie Smollett. So they're yelling, "This is MAGA country," to make Jussie Smollett think that his attackers were white. And if you listen to Mark Garagos' statements, it makes it sound like Jussie Smollett either thought his attackers would be what he initially reported. He thought it was white guys, I think. If I recall correctly. So, yeah, I mentioned the bleach. Yeah, so it also could have been a different thing. It might not have exactly been bleach. There's several different types of things, each of which freeze at a different temperature. But yeah, it could have been that the bleach was being stored inside, and then shortly before the attack was brought outside. That's how the bleach could have been poured on Jussie Smollett without freezing at that temperature. below zero or whatever it was. And another thing, people say, well, Jussie Smollett is an actor, so he can't be believed. It's like, oh, so actors never get attacked? They say the same thing about, people who are, all right, it's like veterans. Like, veterans need to defend themselves. Veterans get attacked. Crazy people get attacked. Actors are sometimes telling the truth. So anyway, just because he's an actor doesn't mean he can't be telling the truth about being attacked. And they say, oh, this was his big moment to show off his acting skills, to have a stage attacked. And then they say, well, why wasn't it filmed? It's like, I don't know. How am I supposed to explain why it wasn't filmed? And they're like, well, he was a big actor. He was supposed to be filmed. It's like, it wasn't staged. You're presuming it was staged. I don't have to explain why there's no video. Finish and go over a few facts. The only evidence that the Osundairo brothers, the Nigerian brothers who were training Jussie Smollett for his role on that show he was on, he was trying to get buff. So he hired these two Nigerian brothers, the Osundairo brothers. The only evidence that the Osundairo brothers confessed to fabricating a crime is a statement that the police wrote. Based on what the police said, the Osundairo brothers told them in a police car, I think a police car, a few days after the attack. So we have to take it on the police's word that the Osundairo brothers confessed. And there's this whole idea that the Osundairo brothers and Smollett confessed. There's an idea that Smollett pled guilty. He didn't. He agreed to do community service and pay money for, offsetting the cost of the investigation. He did not admit guilt to anything. They point to his connections to Kamala Harris and the fact that he's got brothers and sisters who are in Hollywood. And to be fair, Smollett is friends with a bunch of Democratic politicians, and there is a DC Hollywood. There's a connection there. Like the CNN, the news, and Hollywood, they hire CIA and Pentagon and FBI analysts to make their films super realistic. And Bill Clinton was in the movie Contact saying there was aliens. Like, politicians work with Hollywood, and they both recruit young people for sex slavery. So, not that it has anything to do with Smollett, but, Smollett said, I'm the gay Tupac, and people tried to make all kinds of sense out of that. That doesn't have anything to do with whether he was attacked or not. You have to look at the physical evidence as close as you can. Don't take some statement or whether he was crying really or not crying. Don't take that out of context. Look at the physical evidence in the Jussie Smollett case. People say, oh, the Osundairo brothers had a check that was written from Jussie Smollett, and they say that check was written for a fabricated attack. He's like, no, it didn't. Why would he write on the check that it was for a fabricated attack? It was for training purposes. So the idea is that Smollett trained these guys. Osundairo brothers were going to train Smollett to get buff for his role on Empire, and it's possible that they turned on him and realized that they could racketeer him and get some more money by fabricating a threat against him. And Jussie Smollett received a threat in the mail made out of magazine cutout ransom note style letters. And he was called the F word for the gay slur on the street before the attack, in addition to this is MAGA country. It could have happened. But why would the Osundairo brothers wear a red hat that looks like a MAGA hat? Because they couldn't get a MAGA hat. They couldn't get an actual MAGA hat because that store didn't sell it. The store where they were buying, I think it was a noose. I think they actually bought a noose like out in the open, like crazy people. And let's answer the question, why did Jussie Smollett have a noose hanging around his neck still when the police came? Well, obviously he would have loosened it slightly if it was pulled around his neck so much that it was restricting his breathing. So I think he kept it in place in order to preserve the evidence as close as it was during the attack as possible, so that the police could see that the noose was still on him and see, marks of bleach, the remnants of bleach on his clothing. So if he took the rope completely off, I understand if he, would take it off because it was restricting his breathing, but he probably either loosened it or got it to the point where it wasn't restricting his breathing, kept it hanging around his neck in order to show the police when they showed up that it was still there like it was during the attack, so that he would touch the evidence as little as possible between the time the attack happened, if it did happen, and the time the police showed up. The time that the police showed up. I hope I answered that question. Why would he leave the noose around his neck? Preserve the evidence. And also, to answer in depth a little more, people ask why there's no film of this happening. They try to say, well, Jussie Smollett, he's attached to Hollywood. This is his big break. Fusing reality with fiction, like some Alex Jones shit. And then they say, well, the security camera that would have caught the footage, since I guess it was they say it was pointing in the right direction where it would have caught that attack if it happened, but we reviewed the footage and there's no footage. It's like, well, I don't know. I guess either the camera didn't work or maybe it was pointed several feet away from where the attack happened. Can you prove within a several foot proximity that the fight should have happened? Like, where were the public records? Like, we have no evidence about the angles and the distance. We have no proof. We have to take it on the Chicago Police Department's word, the second most heavily militarized city police department in the country's word, that the security camera they're talking about would have caught the attack if it happened. I think the attack happened. I think it just wasn't caught on camera. I think he kept the noose on to preserve the evidence. And I think the bleach was kept in a warm environment until shortly before the attack. That's how it could have happened.